Want to learn how to charm the socks off anyone? Well, this is how to be more memorable in conversations. 11 years ago, I watched a video with Chris Hadfield that was quite literally out of this world. I mean, you may have seen it too. He was aboard the ISS, the International Space Station, casually floating around in zero gravity, which is cool enough on its own. And then the interviewer asked him to wring out a wet towel. Yes, that's right, a wet towel in space. It sounds like a weird reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but the magic that unfolded, get it, was real. As Chris twisted the towel, the water didn't just drip down, it formed a sparkling, floating halo around it. His enthusiasm was so contagious that I found myself laughing and leaning closer to my screen, completely captivated. This wasn't just science. It was a performance, an invitation to see the universe through his eyes. And just like that, a wet towel and a few globules of water became one of my favorite space stories ever. In the years since, I have seen many of his interviews, not just because I have a deep interest in space, but because he is such a captivating speaker that I get lost in whatever he has to say. Whether that's describing the delicate art of making a sandwich in zero gravity or recounting the silence that accompanies a spacewalk. A personal favorite of mine is this video he did for Vanity Fair where he was fact-checking famous aerospace movies. And if you're listening to this, Mr. Hadfield, Top Gun Maverick, also one of my favorite movies. Now, if you watch the video, he describes the wildest thing that happens to him in space. And you'll notice the way he uses his entire body to tell the story. His use of metaphors. It was just like surfing on the world's aurora. The way he takes deliberate pauses to make sure his audience is following. Yes, being an astronaut and detailing a spacewalk is undeniably cool, but with his storytelling prowess, I'm convinced Chris Hadfield could make even watching paint dry sound like a suspense-filled adventure. In fact, I had a chance to meet him earlier this year when we were both speaking at the same event together. He's as charming in person as he is on camera. His gift for conversation extends beyond mere information sharing. He weaves a narrative that resonates on a human level, which he does by tapping into universal themes of curiosity, resilience, and shared bond of experiences, however out of this world they may seem. But this ability to engage isn't just for astronauts, poets, or Barack Obama. It's something any of us can achieve with the right approach. Now, as an introvert, I haven't always had the skills I needed to chat with people. But as I learned how valuable it was, and yes, I'm sorry to say, fellow introverts, you do need to learn how to talk to people, I took an engineering approach and developed a 3-step process for conversation that anyone can follow. And I first revealed my process in my book, Humor That Works, and it can help anyone become more memorable in conversations. Here's how you do it. Step number 1, ask compelling questions. Dale Carnegie is famous for saying that the easy way to become a good conversationalist is to encourage the other person to talk and then be a good listener. He claimed you would make more friends in a week by being interested in other people than you would in a year of trying to be interesting. The problem is that if you ask the same boring questions, you'll get the same boring answers, and that's not really a conversation, but a performance of things you already rehearsed. Instead, the normal, boring questions incorporate a little bit of humor and ask questions that are different, effective, and fun. And instead of asking, what do you do? Try, what's the coolest thing you've worked on recently? Or instead of, where are you from? Why not, what do you like most about where you live? Or instead of just, what's your name? You could follow up with, is there a story behind your name? The goal is to get the other person to talk about something they are passionate about, oftentimes themselves. By asking compelling questions, you get the other person to share more about themselves in a way they don't typically think about, which makes you more memorable. Step number 2, tell interesting stories. When people ask you a question, it's not about turning it back around on them. You're having a conversation, not playing 20 questions or interrogating them. So instead of answering with a one-word response, tell a story. Studies have shown that facts are 20 times more likely to be remembered if told in story form. And don't feel like your story has to be strictly work-related. Don't just tell people your job title and stop there, says John Garrett, former Big Four accountant turned comedian and culture change expert. He says who you are is more than what you do for work, and what you do outside of your 9 to 5 is what people are more likely to remember. Your story should be interesting, concise, and actually answer the person's question. But with the right stories, you can create a deeper bond with the other person by connecting with them through your past and your future, again, making you more memorable. Step number 3, continue the conversation. How do you know what questions to ask or stories to tell? Simply build off the last thing the other person said using a technique from improvisation called yes and. Yes and is the fundamental mindset of improv, and it's also how I went from being awkward in conversation to never running out of things to talk about. If I need to, believe me, I'm still quiet a lot of the time. But even a question like, so how about this weather? You can respond, yes, and if you weren't at this event, how would you be enjoying the weather? Which turns the conversation about the state of the atmosphere into one about hobbies. By doing this, you're not just keeping the conversation alive, you're enriching to it, you're adding to it. You transform what could be a simple exchange of pleasantries into an opportunity to connect on a more personal level. I also have one last bonus tip for you, but before we get there, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and be sure to subscribe. Bonus tip number 4, inject humor. Humor breaks down barriers and creates a comfortable space for people to open up. When the topic of weather comes up, instead of a standard response, you might say something like, I just learned that there are 1,800 tornadoes in the US every single year. I heard that and was blown away. Okay, that might be too dumb of a joke, but adding a little bit of levity not only lightens the mood, but also shows your ability to share a side of your personality, an ability to see the fun side of everyday situations, and who doesn't want to be around someone like that? Conversations are more than just an exchange of words and information. They are an opportunity to connect, engage, and leave a lasting impression. This approach not only makes other people feel valued and understood, but also makes you more memorable. Humor entertainers have a somewhat natural knack for injecting humor into conversations effortlessly. But humor is a skill that can be cultivated, not just a trait you're born with. You can develop your own unique style of humor with a bit of practice and insight. To help you get started, I've created a quiz that can help you discover your own humor persona. This gives you a clearer idea of your natural comedic style and how you can use it to make your conversations more engaging and more memorable. So, channel your inner Chris Hadfield and be out of this world. Well, maybe not literally, but figuratively in the way that you talk with other people. Remember to ask compelling questions, tell interesting stories, and continue the conversation. So, how about this weather?